All right, we're unmuted. I had to check. That's why I was going off to the other side. Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday, August 29th, 2020. Last weekend, had to change some things up. But so the spiritual readings I was going to do last weekend, we're going to do next weekend. And then I'm also going to do it on October 31st. So for those of you that want to have a good planned one ahead to try and make a live stream, that will probably be the one. So today I want to bring up some answers to some questions that people tend to have regarding what I do and what I know. I know I've touched base a little bit here and there on various topics, but I never really go into a lot of detail on some of it, especially the spiritual stuff, because I know we had a whole topic with Dave regarding myofascial release and getting all down into the technical terms, but there's still some just overview questions that I get a lot regarding that as well. So I'm going to talk about MFR first and the fascia system real quick, not because it is any less than spiritual, but there's not as many questions on that one, is really what it comes down to. So today is a stormy day. You know what? And just real quick, collectively, the spirits want me to tell everybody that the new normal is not going to be what it was since COVID started, and a lot of upheaval has started within our society, as well as the world. And the best thing you can do is to embrace the changes, embrace the newness, look at your life, evaluate your life, get rid of things that don't really work for you. And even if that's people in our lives, which I know is difficult, and just try and live with some kindness from your heart. It's funny because I keep going back to what Dave said, which Dave's alive and well, is that what we're seeing nowadays is two types of people in this world. Those that are empathetic and those that are not. And not just because you're empathetic because it happened to your family, but just for another person, even when you've never met them. And that, maybe what they're going through might be just as challenging as what I go through or what you go through. So, Krishna Das uses ease of heart a lot, and it reminds me more and more each day what that means. And just know that COVID is never going away. Just like influenza, the flu, it never goes away. So until we understand it, until we know how our bodies respond to it, unfortunately, this is our normal, because we cannot over-indate our healthcare system, especially our nurses and doctors. It's one thing when we think of, the insurance card and, the services that we feel entitled to or owed as a human right, as well as just because we paid into it, or because we're dying and we need it. But it's our nurses and our doctors that need a little bit of understanding and compassion, and that's where that empathetic towards another person really comes in. So everybody breathe. Everyone take a moment. And when things get really, really stressful, take a breath, a good breath. Okay, so with that said, spirits want me to tell you all that. So fascia, what is it? The best way, and I like to do layman's term because it's easier to remember. For me, when I was learning about it, I envision an orange. When you cut an orange in half, you see the white stuff under the skin. You see the white stuff between the slices. You see the white stuff moving in and out of the slices. That's what fascia does within our system as well. It's not dried out because we're still alive and connected to water and sources. It can get dried out in a sense when things are squeezing it, dysfunction, diagnoses, pain, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever, it clamps down, right? Even just patterns of life. clamped down. Somebody who sits behind a computer for their entire life, their shoulders are going to be rounded forward. Their chest cavity is going to be pulled in because they're sitting in this position all the time. Truck drivers usually have one arm up on the window and the other one on the stick as they're moving around. Now they're in this holding pattern. And our body's smart enough to realize that we want to be in that holding pattern. And if everybody would just put their arms up for just a moment and hold it, it takes muscle contractions for us to maintain that and energy. And so the body's smart enough to say, hey, I feel like you always want to be in this spot, so to save my resources, I'm going to solidify a little bit. It's why people get, one of the reasons people get frozen shoulder syndromes. It's that holding pattern. And whether we're holding it because of injury, surgery, life, work, how we sleep, how we walk, how we do anything, or because we're emotionally upset, because we've been hit and abused. And so anytime anybody walks in the room, you tighten up, waiting to be hit. That this person in your life always has something negative to say. And so you're waiting, you tense up, you're waiting for it. Go ahead, say it, I'm prepared. And what are you doing to yourself? You're squeezing, you're holding down, you're creating patterns of hold. And those patterns create dysfunction. Those dysfunctions create pain, which also can lead to diagnoses of what we see in the world. I try not to say 100% this or that, because there's always something moving around. But those that have carpal tunnel syndrome, especially hairdressers, I work their shoulders for an MFR perspective. They don't need the surgery. So there's options. There's the holistic way, which I always try and go down. And then there's surgery and pain meds. And sometimes we need that. And that's okay. Because the last time I checked, I'm still alive. You all are still alive. And so sometimes it's a little too much. So when I had to go through breast cancer surgery as well as a full hysterectomy, yeah, did my thought go, well, can MFR help me? It absolutely helped me prepare for surgery. And maybe it could have helped me, but I mentally was not able to completely go down a complete holistic path. So surgery was an option for me. And this is where the ease of heart comes in that I'm learning more and more. When we're eased with our own hearts and stop trying to put judgments and fix things, then it helps us balance a little bit. And it's funny because those that know me know I'm a fixer. So for me to say that, that's a lot of growth. I know I couldn't have said that a year ago, even 10 years ago. So fascia is so important. It's where all our nerve endings run through, our blood vessels. It's where our fluid, we hear about our body being 60% fluid. Well, where is that? That's all throughout the whole body. A lot of it is in that system. And you can go back to the very detailed MFR video with Dave to learn quite a bit more, because again, this is just high overview. So why does treating these areas help? Think of it like a rubber band. And I don't think I have a rubber band on me in my drawers here. No, I don't think so. But think of a rubber band and you're pulling on it, right? And we've all had rubber bands where we're pulling on it and we're stretching it to its limits, whether it's because we're just stretching it to the limit or we're stretching it because it's been worn out and, it's ready to go. And as you pull and you stretch and you stretch and you stretch and you stretch, it finally breaks. Well, in our body, that stretching ends up causing so much pain because everything's pushed down and clamped up. Now, it can be the opposite area, but remember, think of levers. So if one shoulder's higher, the opposite hip has to be higher because we're in gravity. So as that rubber band is pulling, it's squeezing, pressure, and it hurts. And that could be, a problem area because of what's going on. So it is a problem area in a lot of ways. But what's the opposite? Where is it pulling from? Those of us with bubble butts, we all want them, but they're terrible on our back. They're terrible on our stomachs because it's just pulling. And the bubble butts isn't just because our butt has a lot of fat in it. It's because our hips are rotated. And if our hips are rotated, we're pulling on the stomach muscles. We're pulling especially on the psoases while we're shortening the back and scrunching the back up. So, stretching out the back will help balance the hips. So there's a lot of I can go through the whole body, obviously, but, this is a short overview. So if you have questions specifically, just let me know. So treating the areas that are too tight will help the areas that are being overstretched. And by giving it some slack, right? So when something is being pulled on and it's about to break, what do? You give it slack. And when you give it slack, it then releases that tension. You release the tension, you now start to stretch the parts that's too tight, they're pulling you out of place. So again, think of the shoulders, right? So you're sitting behind the computer and your shoulders are around it like this. Your upper back is so overstretched, and now your neck's going in different places. Your low back's going, like everything gets affected. And so now you're doing this. So if we can open this up, right, and pull back, you're giving slack to the back while you're opening your chest cavity. And you may not feel pain in your chest. You'll probably more feel it in your back. But this will open you up so you can breathe better, so you can sleep better. Maybe not have indigestion, maybe not have heart attack symptoms, various different things. So think of it like that. Levers in gravity, one's pulling, which one's being overstretched. And so this is a good one. So how does past lives affect the body in this life? Because again, it was in the past, so why does it matter, right? But usually when a past life is affecting us in this life, it's creating some of these patterns of embracing and holding or stress. And if that stress is adding to the body's dysfunctions, now it's just more and more, right? The cup keeps getting full. I always was somebody who's not claustrophobic, but I'm claustrophobic if I'm trapped under the covers, if clothing's too tight, if I wear necklaces or have a t-shirt that's up kind of high. As you see, usually I'm not wearing necklaces and I have a V-neck. What I discovered once I started going down an MFR journey and working on my pains is that these feelings that I have regarding things around my neck, being closed in, being too tight, was because in past lives I have been burned as a witch many times. And how they burn witches is tie them at the stake. They put a rope around their neck, their arms, and their legs. So what does that sound like? That sounds like what I just described that I don't like. And so what would happen is that past life, anytime in this life I was in that situation, I went into a panic mode because I never dealt with the trauma of those lives. And it's kind of carried over into here. Because in the end, our bodies change, but our soul is still the same soul. It's just a new shell. So, and that's just one aspect. But if you bring in past life situations such as the last life, maybe you got run over by a truck. Well, now you have a constant fear that you're going to be run over by a truck. That's not helping you. That's only hindering you. And that's where it comes in that the emotional and mental stress affects the physical body. Because now every time you see a truck, you're going to tense up, right? And if we tense up, what happens? That pattern starts to squeeze down. If we stay in it long enough, the body starts to do that for us. So those kind of emotional, mental triggers, even from a past life situation, becomes a problem. So how do you address that in the real world, right? Obviously for dysfunction, pain, MFR, you can see an myofascial release therapist. But these emotional things, people that in a car accident that I meet, I always tell them, and I've only learned this probably, since I started doing MFR and getting treated. But I tell all my clients that come to me because they have pain from a car accident. Next time you go near that intersection, next time the day is similar, if it was a rainy day or a bright sunny day, next time you see a car similar or a truck, and you're out there in the world, scream at the top of your lungs. Scream. Scream it out. Turn the music up if you need to, so people would think you're just singing really loud to the radio, if that's what that matters, because in the end, you got to get it out. When somebody really pisses you off and you can't really discuss it, because you can't say anything back, Scream it out. You know, you don't have to say the words, just scream at the top of your lungs. It helps because it releases that tension and stress. Okay, so let's move on to spirits. Spirits. There's always a lot of questions about spirits. And I know that's because unless you interact with spirits because of your own abilities, there's a lot of unanswered questions out there. It's not something that's talked about. It's not something that necessarily can be studied. Do I think if they hook something up to my head to monitor my brain activity while I'm in communication, would they see something differently than a normal person? I believe so. And anybody out there that does that kind of work that would like to try it, reach out to me. I will definitely volunteer my time for that. But spirits. So today I thought I answered a question, but sometimes this happens where I think I answered the question and then I get a ton of messages. So that particular text gets all the way to the bottom. And next thing I know, days later, as I'm cleaning out my text box, I see I didn't answer a question. And it brought up a really good, interesting thing. So we talked about dreams in a different episode, a little bit more detailed. But in this case, life and death dreams. That just feels so real. And it's scary. And you wake up wondering, oh my God, is this going to happen? And it might. It might not. But where do you go? Now, if you know someone like me, obviously you'll reach out, which is what would happen. Or if you believe in spiritual stuff or the opportunity arises that you take the opportunity to, seek out and talk to a spiritual medium, then you do that. Sometimes, though, when I ask, I get nothing. Silence. Nobody's talking. Nobody's saying anything. No one's saying yes. No one's saying absolutely not. Nothing. I've come to learn that that means that it is a high possibility, which is scary to think, especially when it's our loved ones. So what I end up saying is just that. They're nothing. I'm not hearing nothing. And that usually means this. So then what I say is trust your gut. If you end up in a deja vu situation, which deja vu is just at some point in the past you saw the future. But yet it feels like, weird because you've already experienced it. But it's just because you experienced it, whether you dreamt it, whether you astral project it and you felt it, or whether it was just the sense of knowing, which is part of spiritual abilities. But if you find yourself in that exact situation, it will come to mind. And if so, change the pattern. Leave. I don't care how much money you spent to get to wherever you were going. If you had a dream that by being there, something bad's going to happen, leave. Free will, right? People talk about free will in many different ways, but leave. It's not worth the money spent for somebody's safety, especially when we're talking about a death situation. Leave. Or let's say you woke up that day and you decided, you know what, I'm not going out of the house. Okay, trust it. Break whatever plans you have. Because even if nothing bad happened, you changed it. So it's not going to happen. And if nothing bad happens, wonderful. Isn't that the best thing out of it? I would think so. Because in some cases, for example, talking about life or death, why wasn't I told about Morgan dying? In the past, I was. I was given a warning. I told him and his friends not to go over into Jersey, that I was seeing them in a black car with no license plate, so it kind of looked like an undercover car situation, going into a questionable neighborhood that they should not be in, and that it was going to go bad, and that some kids would die, including my son. And I told him and his friends that, and fortunately, when it came to that kind of stuff, Morgan and his friends listened to me. And so they didn't tell me at the time. My son just said, I'll stay in for the weekend. I'm not going to go anywhere. And then after the weekend was over, he did fess up that they were going to go into Jersey in a black car that looked like an undercover car because there was no rims on it. It scared him. So he chose to change that situation. Because in the end, even though there's paths set up for us, we can change them at any given time. We can get off the train. We don't have to stay on it. And then a new path creates. So there's infinite paths out there, even though there's set ones that are kind of running the rails a little bit. But again, we make those changes. We have that choice. So trust your gut. That's what I tell everybody. Trust your gut. So how do you know that the truth was spoken? There's a couple things. One, you get goosebumps. Now you might think, well, you might be cold. And that's true. If you are in like a meat locker or you're really cold, okay, chances are you have goosebumps because you're cold. The second one is the reason the goosebumps are there is because something negative, like really extremely negative, might be around you. A negative entity, that kind of thing. When typically around me, that's not the case because I keep everything pretty safe. But I have been in places where I got goosebumps because something very negative was around. But then the other reason you get goosebumps, especially when somebody's talking to you, is the truth was spoken. And so your body's responding to that energy because everything's energy. We're all connected. Even if we can't see it, we're all connected. So, past life situations, life or death situations, anything that gets said about the future, if you get goosebumps, the truth was spoken, especially if you're doubting it in those moments. All right, so talking about negative energies, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. So clearing spaces, right? So I do white light. It's out there on the videos. If you message me, I'll tell you all the time, do white light, to protect your space. It works because everything is about intentions. You can walk around with sage if you want, but you have to say your intentions. You have to say your rules. These are important because, unfortunately, everything is rules in our society. It's what we gravitate to. It's what we understand. It's what we know on how to get things the way we need and want them, right? If we lived in a ruleless society, then we probably wouldn't put much faith in that. But it's about that faith in that if I do this, then this will help. And it's that firm, strong connection to energy, right? So it's think of the time when you were wishy-washy about something, even with your kids. You're wishy-washy. So kids not listening to you. But then when you're stern, kids listening to you. It's the same thing with the spirit world. Because they understand that we understand how we function in our world, in our society. So the white light situation, I was told after Jesus came through, or what I perceived Jesus to look like, came through, cleared my house, told me how to do it through the spirits, my spirit guides, my angels, whatever we want to call them. And, ever since then, I've been sharing that information just to protect yourself, especially those with kids. We're all born with the abilities, every one of us. We just start to lose them. Intuition is the one ability that stays on and stays strong. So, intentions, rules. So if you don't want to white light because it's too hard to visualize, okay, you should eventually keep trying because there'll be situations when you can't walk around with sage. You can't walk around with a cup of water. You can't walk around in each room and just say what you want to say, especially in the middle of the night and something extremely scary woke you up. It happens to me from time to time. So learn how to protect yourself and ripple that energy out from you to create your rules, your intentions, your space, your love. All right, so power symbols. That's also part of the abilities because I talk about power symbols. Those, a lot of people know what Reiki work is. Even if they've never had it, they have an understanding of it, that it's the basic manipulation of energy, then that said energy will help heal people, will help people feel better, will help protect spaces. Again, intentions, rules, expectations, right? We all have them because we're all alive. The power symbol is for us in general to know we have our protective bubble. We all want to feel safe. And we all understand we have our own personal bubbles, and we all understand how it affects us when somebody enters that bubble and we're not comfortable. It's the same thing with white light of protection. When you're putting your energy out there and your rules out there of what can be in your space, including your home, you want to solidify it by basically ending that bubble. And so the power symbols is that strength, the internal strength, that not only did I create this bubble, and this bubble is awesome, but this is where the bubble ends. Here, 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 here. Because that comes at you from a position of strength, that also means that anytime you're dealing with something extremely negative, especially when you're clearing spaces, that power symbol will also then give you that position of strength to push it out and continue on. So it's just a strength perspective. And that power symbol could be anything, honestly. For me, it's crosses. And for a long time, I didn't understand why. I'm not very structured religious. And there is a difference between structural religion versus spiritual, in my opinion. Spiritual means you don't have to go to a brick and mortar location to feel connected, to get rid of any sins you might feel like you're having, that you are just with spirit always. Whatever deity that might look like, which in the end is all the same. We're all the same. It's all the same energy. So for me, for a very long time, I didn't understand where that came from. And then from a past life perspective, it came to me. In the original days of paganism, before Christianity came in, they used a lot of plus signs. When Christianity came in, they started holding it, and they couldn't hold it, so they added a stem. So that way now what do we have? We have a cross. So that makes more sense to me. I've had people say they don't believe in anything. So what kind of power symbol could they possibly have? And as I said, well, what do you see that is instantly you see it, it gives you strength. That's your power symbol. For my niece, Shannon, it was me. She saw me. She said she saw me anytime that she needed help and protection. She saw me in the corner with my arms crossed giving a stink eye. Because I was the one who made her feel safe from a spiritual perspective, because I understood what she was going through. And that's fine, because in the end, it's what we need to help us feel safe. So don't get stuck on the labels of what that is. God, Christians, Buddha, whatever. It's labels. It's labels. It's all the same. It's all the same energy. So then we also have, haunted places versus haunted people. I know I've said that before. Places typically are not haunted. People are haunted. And the reason being is, for some, it's because of their spiritual abilities. So, for me, especially, I'm haunted. So no matter where I go, no matter where I live, wherever I move to, I can run from it like 1,000 times over, and it's going to follow me because the spirits see me as somebody who still communicates. All kids before the age of 5 are all communicative. If you move because your house is crazy, it's probably going to be crazy in the next space too. Now, there are situations where a place is haunted. And it could be because the spirit, it's residual. They don't know that they're dead. And so they act out the same routine, the same pattern, the same everything. It's like a broken record that just keeps playing that. In that case, you white light them, put up the energy, say that you're free, that you have passed, and you let it go. And then what ends up happening is people tend to wake up, and then they can move on because they're seeing things as a different, because the record was turned off. The record was changed. Why that happens, and I think I talked about this before, is because people say oh, this person died peacefully in their sleep. They never died peacefully in their sleep. It looks like it because they woke up, they saw what was happening because all the spirits around, they know in that moment that they're dying, they relaxed into it, they died. They look like they died peacefully in their sleep. But for those that did not wake up in that moment of death, or it happened so fast that they don't even know that they died, they're the ones that are stuck. They're the ones that are residual hauntings. There are ones that look like residual hauntings where, let's say, somebody was murdered and they're playing that scene over and over and over again. It's not that they don't know that they're dead. They're just stuck on that moment of trauma and tragedy, either because they want to tell somebody what happened to them and truly tell them the whole story, or maybe there's a negative spirit that's keeping them in that state and almost like kind of imprisonment and keeping them there. And they can't move on. So again, white lighting helps because you push out the negative, which then frees that spirit. So some places can be haunted. Those are examples. Other examples are places that have seen a lot of death and it's just blood-soaked grounds, blood-soaked homes, maybe because there was demonic practices done, maybe because there was somebody who was doing maybe too much energy work, spiritual work, and didn't know how to clear it, didn't know how to clean it, so they just have this mishmash of chaos that's coming in on a 24/7 basis, and now it's given this entity. You also have PK activities, but typically they follow whoever created them. And what that is just people that are very energy sensitive. And so when they're upset, their energy gets projected outwardly into a massive force of energy, which over time can create an entity that has its own free will. It takes a lot to do that and takes many, 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 many years to do that. And if that were to happen, then that entity could choose to stay in the house and then continue to create problems and issues for people. Okay, what else we got here? All right, thinning between worlds. That was a question. So I have a thinning in my house, and I didn't understand it for the longest time. I would white light, but this one room was just always a problem. It just seemed like every time I was pushing out the energies and creating a safe, positive environment, it became even more this one room, like I'd have to do it every day. And I don't recall at this point what brought my attention to it, but on the wall there's what I would call, from a label perspective, a thinning. And basically what it means is, like, we've all heard about the veil being thin, and especially around Halloween. So spirits have an easier time moving, into our world. It's similar to that thought process. The spirits are around us all the time. No spirit is stuck here. Except for, I think, I've never heard of people going to hell. I've only heard about negative entities being here and people being tortured within themselves through their own thoughts about their judgments of themselves and sins and this, that, and the other thing, that they are stuck here. I've never heard of somebody going to hell. But there is what we would call a heaven. There is another dimension of what we would call a heaven. And those that go to heaven are not stuck there either. They freely come and go as they please. For those of you with abilities, when you see that bright pinpoint of light, just so tiny, it's like the size of a pinhead, and it just boop, pops in, pops out. That is them. That is a spirit coming and going from what we would call heaven dimension. How you know if they were coming? It feels like it came at you versus going away from you. So the thinning is just of space where, without strong connection, without strong protection is really the better word for it, what could happen is other dimensions, other energy worlds, kind of think of it like this. It's all intermingling of energy. And we could separate it like a plate. You know, we could put the peas here, and we could put the meat here, and we could put the potatoes here. But in the end, it's all together. It's all one thing. And so dimensional things are the same thing. It's just all over the place. It's like a big bowl of soup, you know. And in certain places, that thinning is so small that they can get through it easier. And no matter how much bubbles you put up, no matter how much protection you make, no matter what you do, it's still going to always be a problem. So what I did for my thinning in this one bedroom that I have is I put a cross, a physical cross, you know, physical cross on the wall. And I told anybody that was in that room, do not ever remove this cross. Otherwise, you're not going to sleep and you're not going to be okay. Because I've had people sleeping in that room, especially when my son was arrived. His friend Lou used to sleep in that room when he needed somewhere to stay. And I told him, do not take this cross off this wall. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time. Could I deal with it? Absolutely. But it's exhausting. That means I have to wait light every day. And I got so much going on that that's not going to work out. So put your power symbol there. In some cases, like when we talk about, like, let's say, help clients with negative energy because the spirits there, let's say Native Americans, are very upset. And so they're creating problems. Pay offering. Follow your gut. Trust what you think is right. I could say a lot of things and you can be like, yeah, no, she's crazy. That's okay. You don't have to listen to every word I say. Whatever ones resonate with you, that's the ones that, you know, pay attention to. Because we're all on different pages. We're all on different levels. We're all our own stories in our own book. And the same exact situations can happen to us, and yet we experience it completely different. So, and then within that thinning of the world, that's where other dimensional things can be as well. Because again, it's energy. Everything's energy. It's so vast and so beyond our comprehension that I know I don't even know everything. And I don't think I could hear everything because I'm still in a human body. I'm still in a human world. And I have to exist here. So thinnings, I've dealt with what would look like gargoyles to us. I've dealt with elementals, little fairy-like things. I've dealt with like these little elementals that were like this big. Sorry, I'm trying to like show you. Like this big and, you know, they're earthbound, you know, but yet you wouldn't see them unless you see the energy of them. So thinnings and dimensionals, things like that, we're just one dimension. We're just one part of the vast that's out there. Think of the galaxy. You know, we're one small planet amongst a ton of stars and a ton of planets. Okay, there was a question real quick. Let me see what it is. What if you dream about a loved one who's already passed away, die again? I did not see this person in my dream, just told again that they have died. So that's actually a good question. Anytime we dream of somebody that's been already passed, look at what they're doing, not what they're saying, what they're doing. If they're not doing anything, or if it's like when I dream of my son, I always dream of him as a little kid and how much I miss him. And usually when I dream about him now, I even say to him, like, but you're dead, you're gone. Like, you're not here. And I'll keep saying that to him in his dream, and all he does is smile at me and hug me, or just he's there. And then I get comfortable with him, you know, being alive. And then I start telling him about everything that happened since he died. And then I wake up. In that case, it was two things, which I recently learned. One, I got to stop looking at him like a small child that still needed my protection, that still needs my protection and my love, because it was causing pain. The other one is because I miss him and I want him back. Sorry. And I want to tell him everything that has happened. even though he sees it. You know, the spirits see everything. They're everywhere with everyone if they want to be. So it's to help our trauma, our emotional trauma, our physical trauma, our mental trauma, which affects us as a whole, mind, body, and soul. Didn't realize when I picked this business name how much it was going to come truly into mind, body, soul. So it really all depends on what's happening in the dream. If they're pointing to somebody in the dream that's alive, then maybe there's a problem with that person. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to die, but maybe they're having some problems. Maybe they're struggling. Maybe they need you to reach out and say hi or ask them if everything's okay. So it's really paying attention to what they're doing, as well as getting out our hurts, our loss for them. So just embrace it for what it is. And the more that you get into it, the more you'll realize more and more how easier it is to communicate in your dreams. Because usually when we're dreaming about them, they're there by our side, giving us that dream, trying to talk to us. Spiritual abilities, you know, the biggest thing that anybody can do is pay attention to their dreams. Because again, we were all born with it. Just not everybody keeps it on. Okay. Let's see. We talked about that. All right, we talked about that. Sadness and anger. And why does sadness, anger, frustration, like the negative emotions, empower negative energies or negative spirits? We've all experienced in our life where somebody was around us that really like drained us. You know, like we were around them. It started out fine, but by the time that we stopped talking to them or what they left or whatever happened, we just felt tired and exhausted. They literally were an energy vampire to us. They sucked the energy out of us. They don't necessarily know they're doing it, right? Because they're alive. They're just maybe going through a tough time. Maybe they're just complainers. Maybe they're just negative people. I mean, we all know those people. Everybody, we just do. We've all experienced it. And so naturally, they're going to steal the positive energy. They're going to take it from us, right? To feel better. Because it's an energy exchange. Everything's energy, right? Everything's energy. Even my walls are energy. Everything's energy. So when somebody's alive and they are a negative person, they're grumpy because life gave them a shitty hand, or maybe that's just the way they are. They're just grumpy. They're just negative. When they're around positive people, their body, their souls, their energy naturally pulls that energy of positivity towards them because they need that. Because they're just so sad and so upset. But when it's spiritual, negative energy can't feed off of a positive person, which I find interesting because if you're alive, you can, but if you're dead, you can't. And usually it's kind of the same in both worlds, usually. In this case, it's this weird exception. And when there's positivity around and you're putting out a lot of energy of positiveness, negative spirits don't want that. They want you to be suffering. And I think that's the only difference between spirit versus human. Being alive still, I should say, versus spirit. If it can't feed off you because you're pushing it out, then what does it need? It needs the opposite. It needs you to be miserable. It needs you to be sad. It needs you to be anxiety ridden. It needs you to be, depressed. It needs that because when you are in that state, you're just trying to absorb whatever you can because you feel like shit, truly like shit. So you want people to say, you're important, that they love you. You crave it, you need it, you want it. Pull, which is why, as a human, a positive person can feed that more than it can negative energy. So if I'm giving grumpiness to a person that's alive, they don't want to hear it. All it's going to do is make them more miserable. And maybe they'll join in on the bandwagon for a brief moment, but in the end, it's not making them feel better. They're just miserable. But spiritual activity, you're pushing them away. So they need you to be miserable. They need you to be cranky. They need you to be upset. They need you to be depressed. They need you to be this so they can feed off of you. It's literally like a parasite in some ways, which then will create additional levels of depression, anxiety, just the negative feelings. Feeling worthlessness just amps. And if you can't get away from it, it's just worse. Let's see what else. We talked about that. So another question was like the solstices, the winter solstice, summer, all those things, fall, and like how do they affect, and why are they important? Prior to modern conveniences, prior to modern technologies, prior to, becoming lawyers and doctors and all these things, right? Where it involves a lot of thought and a lot of process. For the most part, way back when man started on Earth, they were in the here and now. Maybe a little bit into the future of what are they going to eat, for a couple days, but they just existed. They were here, they were now. They were in these moments of time, not worrying so much about the future, not worrying about the past. They understood shit happens and people die and this sucks and our home got destroyed and we have to move on, whatever. They let it go. We don't let things go. We hold on to those thoughts, those problems, those emotions, those angers. We hold on to it like it's gold, like it's so important. And I'm right there with you because I'm still alive too. Obviously, you saw my tears and my son. But we hold on to this. But back in a time when you just lived day to day, moment to moment, because you didn't have all this stuff to worry about outside of food, shelter, safety. You just existed. And you existed within the energy worlds that is around us all the time. So back then, again, like thinking about like the paganism, because when we think of solstices, we tend to think of paganism. But even then, they saw the energies, and there are certain places in the world where the energy is stronger, where the energy has spirit pathways, which is just a pathway that spirits can move through without taking a lot of energy, and just kind of like think of like an escalator, right? It just takes you along. Vortexes, energy from the earth that's so strong and it moves spirits around and gets them all over the place, going up, coming down, from heaven, the dimensions, whatever we want to talk about. They all exist, right? And back then, people saw them. They were more connected with each other, the world, and just the spirits of the unknown. They still saw their loved ones, and it wasn't a grieving. Think of like the Day of the Dead and where that came from. The Native Americans who would do ritualistic things by the fire to offer peace and love to their past ones who have died so that they can move forward. To the souls of the animals that they ate for nourishment. They were all connected within one. And that connection allowed them to see things that we've gone blind to. That we've shut down because we're thinking. Because that's really the difference for someone like me versus someone else. When I'm communicating, I'm not thinking. I don't remember what I tell people. I never will unless I'm pulled out of it because it's a sensitive topic or they tell me when I'm still thinking. I'm connected to the oneness, to the spirits, to the energy, to earth, to the animals. I still eat meat. Not to offend any vegetarians out there, but I do still eat meat. I enjoy it. There's some, obviously, I won't eat because it creeps me out and grosses me out. But, but again, our Native American friends did that. Our ancestors did it. They just paid homage to that spirit's energy for their nourishment and thanking them. And we also didn't overkill everything to put into the convenience of our grocery stores. So huge difference. But again, that's where we've lost connection to the oneness, to the spiritual abilities within ourselves, within the world, and seeing it for what it is, which is just a connection to all things, love and compassion, and acceptance. Be here, be now. So I think that's a great one to end on. We started in the beginning with connection about the world that we're currently in, the state of mindset we're in, and we're ending it with this is what we should get back to be here, be now. Because if we are, we're not thinking of the future, and we're not thinking of the past. And since losing my son, since losing Morgan, when Dave had told me to feel the sofa under my legs, to feel the floor under my feet, to smell the air, to be in here, be now, as I was going through a very emotional state. I still cried because I was sad, but it brought me back to here, to now. And try it. Challenge yourself over, the next week. When something is bothering you, whether it's sadness, anger, frustration, whatever the case is, feel the floor, breathe, smell the air. Whatever it is that's happening, be here, be now. Because our pain exists in the future and our pain exists in the past. It usually doesn't exist in this moment except for extreme physical pain. Then, of course, that's going to hurt. But the emotional, mental stuff doesn't exist in this moment. Another breath. All right. Thank you all. Send me your questions if you have them. Next weekend, which is September 2nd, so the first Saturday of the month, I'm going to do a spiritual reading. So anybody who might be interested in getting a live spiritual session, whether it's next Saturday or a future one, message me and we'll figure it out. I do have somebody who wants to do another past life regression through here, but she lives in Iran, I believe it was, or near Iran, so it's trying to get the details worked out. But that one should be interesting as well. So enjoy. Everybody have a safe and happy Saturday. And just remember, breathe.